What happens when a late-night host decides to ambush a former president on live television? You won't believe what unfolds when Seth Meyers throws journalistic integrity out the window and launches a full-scale attack on his guest. This isn't your typical celebrity interview gone wrong. This is a masterclass in how not to conduct yourself as a professional broadcaster. Before we get into this incredible story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below, because you're not going to believe what unfolds when the cameras start rolling and the gloves come off. Last night's episode of Late Night with Seth Meyers was supposed to be a standard promotional interview. Donald Trump had agreed to appear on the show to discuss his latest book and upcoming political initiatives. What viewers witnessed instead was a calculated ambush that left audiences stunned and social media exploding with outrage. The tension was palpable from the moment Trump walked onto the set. Meyers, who had been pacing backstage like a caged animal according to production sources, barely managed a forced smile as he greeted his guest. The usual warm-up banter that characterizes most late-night interviews was noticeably absent. Instead, Meyers launched straight into his prepared assault. "So, Donald, let's talk about your track record with military conflicts," Meyers began, his voice dripping with barely concealed hostility. The question caught Trump off guard. This wasn't what had been discussed during pre-interview preparations. Trump's media team had specifically outlined topics that would be covered, and foreign policy wasn't supposed to be on the agenda. Trump shifted in his chair, his expression hardening as he realized what was happening. "Seth, I thought we were here to discuss my book and the future of America. That's what your producers told my team." But Meyers wasn't backing down. He leaned forward aggressively, his eyes narrowing as he pressed the attack. "Your book talks about leadership, doesn't it? So let's examine your leadership during times of conflict. How do you justify the drone strikes that happened under your administration? How do you sleep at night knowing innocent civilians died because of decisions you made?" The audience fell silent. This wasn't the entertainment they had signed up for. Even the studio crew seemed uncomfortable with the direction the interview was taking. Cameras captured the shocked expressions of audience members who had come expecting laughs and lighthearted political commentary. Trump's jaw clenched visibly. "That's a loaded question, Seth, and you know it. Every president has to make difficult decisions to protect American interests. I inherited multiple conflicts and worked to de-escalate tensions around the world." "De-escalate?" Meyers scoffed, his voice rising. "Is that what you call increasing military spending and threatening nuclear war on Twitter? Is that de-escalation to you?" The former president's hands gripped the armrests of his chair. "I kept America out of new wars, Seth. That's more than your previous Democratic heroes can say. But I don't think you're interested in facts here. This feels like a setup." Meyers' mask was slipping completely now. Gone was any pretense of professional journalism. "Setup? This is called holding you accountable. Something the media should have done more of when you were in office." "Accountable for what, exactly?" Trump fired back, his voice growing louder. "For securing the border? For bringing jobs back to America? For negotiating peace deals in the Middle East? What exactly are you holding me accountable for, Seth?" The host's response revealed just how deep his personal animosity ran. "For the chaos. For the division. For making America a laughingstock on the world stage. Do you take any responsibility for any of that?" Trump stood up slightly in his chair, his face reddening. "A laughingstock? We had the strongest economy. In decades, we rebuilt our military, and we had peace through strength. What's laughable is this pathetic excuse for journalism you're trying to pass off as an interview." Meyers was fully unleashed now, abandoning any pretense of objectivity. "Peace through strength? Is that what you call threatening to nuke hurricanes? Is that what you call suggesting we bomb Mexico? Your idea of strength was reckless and dangerous." "I never said any of those things," Trump shot back, his voice booming across the studio. "You're literally making things up now. This is exactly the kind of fake news garbage that divides this country." The confrontation was spiraling completely out of control. Meyers had crossed every line of professional broadcasting, turning what should have been a standard interview into a personal vendetta. His questions weren't seeking information or insight. They were designed to humiliate and provoke. "Fake news." Meyers laughed bitterly. "Everything is fake news when it makes you look bad, isn't it? Even your own former staff members who've gone on record about your erratic behavior." Trump's eyes flashed dangerously. "My former staff? You mean the people who were fired for incompetence? Or disloyalty? Yeah, I'm sure they have nothing but glowing things to say. This is character assassination, Seth, and it's disgusting. The studio audience was shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Many had begun murmuring among themselves, clearly disturbed by what they were witnessing. This wasn't entertainment. It was a public execution disguised as an interview. Meyers pressed on relentlessly. Character assassination? I'm asking you direct questions about your record. If you can't handle that, maybe you shouldn't be in public life. Handle it. Trump's voice was now echoing through the studio. I can handle anything you throw at me, Seth. What I can't handle is dishonest journalism from someone who's supposed to be a comedian, not a political hack. The insult hit its mark. Meyers' face flushed red as he realized his credibility was being questioned on his own show. But instead of backing down, he doubled down on his attack, setting the stage for an even more explosive confrontation that would leave everyone in the studio speechless. Political hack. Meyers snarled, his voice trembling with rage. I'm a political hack? This from someone who turned the presidency into a reality TV show, who treated the Oval Office like a Twitter playground. Trump leaned forward menacingly, his eyes blazing. At least I accomplished something with my platform. What have you done besides make jokes about people who actually work for a living? You're a failed comedian playing journalist, and you're not even good at either one. The studio fell into stunned silence. Even the production crew had stopped what they were doing to watch this unprecedented meltdown unfold. Meyers had completely abandoned any semblance of professional hosting, and Trump was matching his hostility blow for blow. Failed comedian. Meyers' voice cracked with indignation. I've been on television longer than you were in politics. I've built a career on intelligence and wit, not on inherited money and bankruptcy filings. Trump's laugh was cold and cutting. Intelligence? Seth, you read jokes off a teleprompter written by other people. I built a multi-billion-dollar empire and became president of the United States. We're not in the same league, and this pathetic display proves it. Meyers was spiraling now, his carefully constructed television persona crumbling in real time. Multi-billion-dollar empire? Built on what? Russian money? Deutsche Bank loans? How many contractors did you stiff? How many small businesses did you destroy? There it is, Trump said, spreading his hands theatrically. The conspiracy theories. The unproven allegations. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You can't have a conversation based on facts, so you resort to innuendo and lies. The former president's calm demeanor in the face of Meyers' hysteria was making the host look increasingly unhinged. Audience members were whispering to each other, clearly uncomfortable with the spectacle they were witnessing. Meyers was beyond reason now. Lies? Everything you just said about your presidency is a lie. The economy you inherited was already recovering. The peace deals were bought and paid for. You left office with the country in chaos and an insurrection at the Capitol. Insurrection? Trump's voice rose to match Meyers' volume. You mean the protest that lasted a few hours? While your side spent 4 years burning cities, attacking federal buildings, and calling for violence against Supreme Court justices. That's rich, Seth. The confrontation had devolved into a shouting match, with both men now on their feet. Meyers had completely lost control of his own show, reduced to trading insults with his guest like a schoolyard bully who had finally met his match. My side, Meyers screamed. I'm not taking sides here. I'm trying to hold you accountable for your actions. As president. No, you're not, Trump shot back, his voice booming through the studio. You're trying to relitigate 2020 because you can't accept that half the country rejected your worldview. This isn't journalism, Seth. This is therapy for your Trump derangement syndrome. Meyers' face was now purple with rage. Trump derangement syndrome? The only thing deranged here is your complete inability to take responsibility for anything. Every failure, every scandal, every disaster. It's always someone else's fault, isn't it? What disasters? Trump demanded. Record low unemployment? Energy independence? Historic peace deals? Border security? Which of those accomplishments upsets you the most, Seth? The host was sputtering now, completely out of his depth. Accomplishments? You're delusional if you think history will remember your presidency as anything other than a catastrophe. You're going to be remembered as the president who tried to overturn democracy itself. Democracy? Trump's laugh was harsh and mocking. You want to talk about democracy? What about the FBI spying on my campaign? What about social media companies suppressing stories that hurt your candidate? What about 2 impeachments based on lies? That's your idea of democracy. Myers had painted himself into a corner. Every accusation he made was being turned back on him. Every attack was being countered with uncomfortable truths about his own side's behavior. The interview had become a disaster for the host, but he was too deep in to back down now. Those weren't lies, Myers insisted desperately. You were impeached twice because you abused your power. You were investigated because you surrounded yourself with criminals. You're the one who attacked our institutions. Criminals. Trump's voice was dangerously quiet now. Like the FBI agents who falsified FISA warrants? Like the intelligence officials who lied about Hunter Biden's laptop? Like the prosecutors who were trying to put their political opponent in prison? Those criminals, Seth. The studio audience was now visibly uncomfortable. Several people had gotten up to leave, unable to stomach the toxic atmosphere that had overtaken what was supposed to be light entertainment. The cameras captured their faces, confusion, disgust, and disappointment at what they were witnessing. Myers was flailing now, grasping for any attack that might land. At least they're not family members profiting off the presidency. At least they didn't sell out American foreign policy for personal gain. At least they understand that public service means serving the public, not yourself. Family members. Trump's eyes flashed dangerously. You want to talk about family members? Let's talk about the crack addict's son who was collecting millions from foreign governments while his father was vice president. Let's talk about the laptop full of evidence that your media friends buried. Let's talk about real corruption, not your fantasies. The mention of Hunter Biden sent Myers into overdrive. Fantasies? The only fantasy here is your version of reality where you're the victim of some grand conspiracy instead of just a failed president who couldn't handle the job. Failed president. Trump was now towering over the smaller host, his presence filling the studio. I had the greatest economy in history before the China virus. I rebuilt our military. I moved our embassy to Jerusalem. I destroyed ISIS. I secured the border. What has your guy accomplished besides higher gas prices and World War III? Myers was completely unhinged now, screaming at his guest. My guy? I'm not running anybody's campaign here. I'm trying to interview you. But you can't handle a simple question without turning into a victim. Simple question? Trump's voice dripped with contempt. Seth, you've been attacking me for the last 15 minutes with loaded questions and false premises. This isn't an interview. It's an ambush, and a poorly executed one at that. The confrontation had reached a fever pitch. Both men were red-faced and shouting. The studio filled with an electric tension that threatened to explode into something even more dramatic. Myers had lost all control, both of himself and his show, while Trump seemed to be feeding off the conflict, growing stronger with each exchange. But this was just the beginning. What happened next would cement this confrontation as one of the most shocking moments in late-night television history. As the gloves came off completely and the final, devastating exchange began, Myers, his voice now hoarse from shouting, made one last desperate attempt to regain control. You know what, Donald? This is exactly why you lost in 2020. This is exactly why the American people rejected you. They were tired of the chaos, tired of the lies, tired of the constant drama that follows you everywhere. Trump's response was swift and brutal. Lost. Seth, I got more votes than any sitting president in history. 75 million Americans voted for me despite 4 years of your media friends lying about everything I did. And you want to know why your ratings are in the toilet? Because people are sick of angry little men like you telling them what to think. The studio erupted in gasps. Several audience members audibly groaned at the personal attack, while others began reaching for their phones to record what was clearly becoming a historic television moment. Myers was shaking with rage now. Angry little men? At least I don't throw tantrums on social media every time someone criticizes me. At least I don't attack Gold Star families and war heroes. At least I have some basic human decency. Human decency? Trump's laugh was savage. You've spent the last 20 minutes trying to destroy me on your own show, and you want to lecture me about decency? You're a hypocrite, Seth. A small, bitter man who thinks he's important because he has a television show. The host was beyond all reason now, his professional career imploding in real time. Small? Bitter? This from someone who spent 4 years tweeting at comedians instead of doing his job? This from someone who couldn't handle Saturday Night Live. Making fun of him. At least I had a job that mattered. Trump fired back. At least I was responsible for something more important than making jokes about people who actually accomplish things. You're a parasite, Seth. You feed off other people's success because you've never had any of your own. Meyers lunged forward in his chair, pointing his finger accusingly. Parasite? I've entertained millions of people for years. I've made people laugh during the darkest times in our country's history. What have you done besides divide us and tear us apart? Divide us. Trump's voice filled the entire studio. I brought unemployment to historic lows for every demographic. I brought manufacturing jobs back that your precious Obama said would never return. I secured the border and kept us out of foreign wars. But you can't admit any of that because it destroys your narrative. The confrontation had reached a point of no return. Meyers, his carefully constructed liberal host persona in complete ruins, made one final, desperate play. Narrative? The only narrative here is the truth about who you really are. A failed businessman who conned his way into the presidency and spent 4 years proving he was completely unfit for office. Trump stood up slowly, his imposing presence dwarfing the smaller host. Failed businessman? Seth, I built skyscrapers with my name on them while you were writing jokes in your parents' basement. I employed thousands of people while you employed maybe a dozen writers. And when I became president, I donated my entire salary while you cashed paychecks making fun of me. Donated your salary. Meyers screeched, his voice cracking. While you funneled millions into your own properties. While foreign governments paid to stay at your hotels. That donation was pocket change compared to what you stole from the American taxpayers. The accusation of theft was the final straw. Trump's face darkened as he took a step toward the host's desk. Stole? I lost money being president, Seth. I gave up a comfortable life to serve my country. And this is the thanks I get? Character assassination from a failed comedian who couldn't get a real job if his life depended on it. Meyers was completely unhinged now, standing and jabbing his finger at Trump. Failed comedian? At least I earned my position through talent, not through daddy's money and mob connections. At least people respect me for what I've accomplished. Respect. Trump's laugh was cold and final. Seth, nobody respects you. Your ratings are terrible, your jokes aren't funny, and this pathetic display tonight proves you have no business interviewing anyone about anything. You're embarrassing yourself and everyone who works for you. The studio had fallen into shocked silence. Even the cameramen seemed frozen, unsure whether to keep filming this unprecedented meltdown. Meyers looked around desperately, realizing that his own audience was turning against him. Get out, Meyers whispered, his voice barely audible. What was that? Trump cupped his ear mockingly. Get out. Meyers screamed, his voice echoing off the studio walls. Get out of my studio. Security. Get him out of here. Trump smiled coldly, straightening his tie with deliberate calm. Don't worry, Seth. I wouldn't stay in this third-rate operation another second. But before I go, let me give you some free advice. Maybe try being a comedian instead of a political activist. You might actually be good at it. The former president turned to address the stunned audience directly. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize that you had to witness this unprofessional behavior. This is exactly what's wrong with our media. Today, they can't handle an honest conversation without melting down like children. Meyers was hyperventilating now, his hands shaking as he pointed toward the exit. Out. Get out. This interview is over. It was over the moment you decided to ambush me instead of doing your job, Trump replied calmly. He waved to the audience, many of whom began applauding despite their shock. Thank you for coming tonight. Sorry you had to see Seth lose his mind on television. With that, Donald Trump walked off the set with dignity intact, leaving behind a host whose career had just imploded in spectacular fashion. Meyers stood alone at his desk, chest heaving, face flushed, staring at the exit through which his guest had just departed. The studio remained in stunned silence for several long seconds before the director finally called cut. Camera operators looked at each other in disbelief. Audience members sat in their seats, processing what they had just witnessed. Seth Meyers had entered the evening thinking he could ambush and humiliate a former president on live television. Instead, he had revealed himself to be exactly what Trump had called him, a small, bitter man whose personal hatred had consumed his professional judgment. The confrontation was over, But the damage to Meyers' reputation had only just begun. In trying to destroy his guest, he had succeeded only in destroying himself, creating one of the most catastrophic hosting performances in late-night television history. The interview that was supposed to be Trump's downfall had become Meyers' professional suicide, broadcast live for the world to see.